First up, Biden gives a speech at Harvard and reveals the secret to staying thin while eating ice cream is dropping it on the floor. Next, the scandal of U.S. senators being served bland, flavorless, no-mixer margaritas in El Salvador, and why many are saying this is a bad look for tourism. Next, Trump walks back promise to end the Ukrainian war in 24 hours, replacing it with a policy of, why don't you guys figure this out? Next, judge orders that transgender people must be given passports, saying if we're letting people that can't sit in seats fly, we can also accommodate the mentally ill. Critics of the policy say if these individuals are so good at pretending that there's something they're not, can't they just pretend their passport says their preferred gender?
It's your daily dose of misinformation, pulled from a lightly hemorrhoided asshole. It's today's Run Your Mouth!
People try and tell you what you gotta do. Don't listen to them unless you think it's true. Follow your heart and your dreams. Follow your heart and your dreams.
All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. I had a fantastic weekend out in Chicago, 3 days of shows. Got my work in, got to work on a bunch of jokes, got some new stuff that's real harsh and is cooking. Nothing more fun than when you can get an audience to groan and laugh at what you're saying. But Porch Tour kicks off this weekend. Mobile, Alabama, which apparently, from what I hear, actually has a bit of a downtown music scene. That's what I was hearing. And then we're going to be in Pensacola, Florida the next night. So come on out, Florida people, or if you want to take a little road trip and come out for the beginning of Porch Tour, I'm looking forward to it. I still got a lot of work to do. Luckily on this one, I got some fantastic local comics coming out, and they got all the gear for us. But, you know, I ordered a new bag. I ordered new speakers. The speakers that I bought, of course, I needed the 8-inch ones. I bought the 10-inch ones. Then I bought a new bag because, I don't know if I ever shared this story, but when we did Live from the Denver Comedy Garage, if you never watched it, go ahead, go check it out. That's it was the end of last year's tour. Put out a full special. And, I mean, it was a nutty run of work. It was fantastic to do it all. I am my own crew. I had Gus running the film on that, and he did a fantastic job, but I was working with all of my speaker equipment and whatnot. And I got back to New York. We filmed it one day. This was after a whole stretch of shows. So it's not even like I was just off sitting on my ass. It was after a whole stretch of shows. I did like 3 nights in a row. We filmed the thing. Next day I got up. We edited the full thing. I got on a red-eye flight home. And I had this broken bag, and I've never had what I thought was going to be more of a mental breakdown where, my car was broken, so I was in a rental car. I couldn't find the rental car, and the wheels had fallen off the bag that I had, and I could no longer carry all this stuff, and I didn't know where the car was, and I hadn't slept. It was quite a nightmare. So anyways, you know, we're trying to improve all the Porch Tour gear. I got a new spotlight. I got a new speaker system, which I have to go to B&H and return and get the smaller speakers that I was looking for. And I need a bag that will actually, fit in. But anyway, listen, things are coming together. And come out for Porch Tour. It's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward. I got all new material for it. And, going to keep coming up with stuff as we go. And anyways, porchtour.com, got all the Porch Tour dates. Episode brought to you by OakKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo, only place in the entire world where you can get an entire kilo of kratom for just $60. Per today's episode, I spent too much time putting this one together. And usually, I'm just putting this out there. I know I could just get to it. I understand that. I know I don't have to put kickers, this expert, not expert, blah, blah, blah. I'm just letting you guys know I kind of wrote out a little bit too much, so if it's not your favorite episode, I don't rant as much as usual, or it seems like I get more lost of my own notes, I wrote too many things out, which happens. But I do want to start off talking about, actually, we can take a couple comments. Let's take a couple comments. I got to move to the side to take some comments. Got my camera blocking the view here. Let's start with Spud got questions. I pumped up 4 tires today. Then I sold my Chevelle. Sounds like a cool car. I don't know what that means, though. Eric John Pizza Artist, the real first name in news. Robbie the Fire. Thank you, Eric John Pizza Artist. Mike Tucker finally caught a live one on my way into work. He works some late hours. Mad Sketch, love that song, love the show. Thank you, sir. Mad Sketch, I can't see you until September 20th. When you get tickets, if you were me, a month out, just buy them in advance. Buy them in advance. Let me feel good. Let me know that I don't have to panic about covering for all the flights. Don't wait. Worst case scenario, you can't make it and you put $20 into my pocket. Just but everybody, buy the tickets in advance. Sal the Hamster, Robbie, ever get around Saratoga or at least Albany? We will be doing a show not far from Albany. I believe the ticket link is already up at porchstore.com. All right, one more comment and then let's get into it. Mike Tucker, nope. Every episode is awesome. I like you, Mike Tucker. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. I would like to get into what is going on with this Maryland man who is sent down to El Salvador. And I'd like to say this, everyone should be annoyed by bullshit. Doesn't matter which side, which party's putting it out. You should be annoyed when there's bullshit out there because then you got to do a lot of homework and try and figure out who's bullshitting you and how much bullshit are they putting out there. And the conversation here should be about going direct to jail with no due process. And the Supreme Court, they just issued a decision letting the Donald Trump administration know, hey, no shipping these Venezuelans to El Salvador without giving them a chance to prove that or leave the. Oh, well, no, I'm inserting leaving the country. We'll get to that later. And that's the better conversation of should people without any due process just be getting shipped to a prison for a life sentence. And by the way, I do have a bunch of circling thoughts on this. So that's what I'm thinking aloud. When it comes to, so the bigger issue should just be kind of about due process and non-El Salvadorian citizens being sent to El Salvador. Now, when it comes to this Maryland man, he is from El Salvador and he's getting sent back to his country of origin. Now, it happens to be that there was an earlier court order that said that he wasn't allowed to be sent there. We'll get to that later. But I think typically speaking, to just deport somebody, there probably does not need to be that involved of a court case process. I believe in due process, and I don't think you should be sent to jail or committed of a crime, but I guess it should be pretty simple to just know that somebody is not actually a resident of this country, which means that they broke a law when they came into this country. I feel like there should be enough record keeping amongst countries that if you got someone and you don't think he was originally from here, you should be able to figure that one out pretty quickly. And there shouldn't need to be that much of a court case. I don't think you need to be up in front of a jury of your peers. Now, if we end up in a situation where you start finding out about a lot of American citizens getting shipped to countries that they're not supposed to be in, I might revisit that and say, I guess we need due process for this as well, because government is this reckless that they're shipping Americans to countries that they're not from with no easy route for getting back. And who knows, maybe, I think there was a movie. I saw it as a kid. I don't think it was a particularly good movie with Martin Cheech from Cheech and Chong. I believe that's his actual name, where he's out in Los Angeles. And for some reason, I guess back when they made this movie, people got deported from the country. And so he gets deported from the country. And then he runs into the dude, something Schaefer from the Home Alone movies. And then that guy suckers him into making him work off tacos and beer. And I don't remember anything else from the movie. But anyways, I think you should be able to get deported pretty quickly. I don't think we need that much due process for that. But I do think if you're going to be deposited in jail, you should be. And it's a particular problem if it's not, you're sending you not even to the country that's from your country of origin. Now, I do got a stumper for some of you people. For those of you out there who felt like the Venezuelans that were being sent to El Salvador, they have a they've been labeled terrorists by the United States of America. And once they're being labeled as terrorists by the United States of America, it would be dangerous for the United States of America to bring them back to Venezuela, who is actually maybe purposely bringing these people into the country. And if that's the case, I wonder how you guys feel about El Salvador talking about trading these people back to Venezuela for political prisoners, because that would mean that our supposed friends in El Salvador that we're partnering with here are actually trading known American terrorists to Venezuela? Are you that married to the terrorism title by these labels by the American administration that even chatter of the El Salvadoran government trading them back to Venezuela? Do you start getting nervous like that, bet that these are like we're members of ISIS? Are you that committed to that when the American people gave these people a terrorism label, and so therefore it was totally justified when they got deposited in an El Salvador prison for life without a court case? Are you that committed to it that you would then also take issue if El Salvador was then trading them back to Venezuela? Or would you say that there would be that the El Salvadorian prison or the leaders of El Salvador need to actually prove that those were not terrorists that Venezuela sent to the United States of America to engage in terrorism towards our population before they should be allowed? Just a question for you guys. All right, but now back to the Maryland man. So you got this guy, he's from El Salvador, he's back in El Salvador. Now, there was a judgment previously that he wasn't supposed to get sent back to El Salvador, and he now has a family here, which I believe, I don't know if it's Dreamers or if his wife's an actual American citizen, but I guess his kids are Americans. I'm not sure about that one. Once again, a lot of bullshit circulating. I spent my time, I tried digging through these details, and I'm not sure on that one. But now you got claims also that he's not a good guy, and I think the best way to label him would then be a suspected bad guy, because he's never actually been convicted of a crime in the United States of America. So we've got a guy that is a suspected bad guy. And now also they're telling us that we can't have him back because we can't ask the El Salvadorians for that back. That would be disrespectful, and it's their call. But on the same note, I guess for some reason, if United States senators go down there, they will let the United States senators meet with him. But once again, we can't have the guy back. I mean, I guess if just a random U.S. senator goes down there, they'll make arrangements for margarita picture poses. And on that note, it's the stupidity of the left of, do we have to turn this guy into a George Floyd hero? He's not a hero. It would speak to the principles. When the George Floyd thing happened, we should have a conversation about the violence of cops towards American citizens. But George Floyd, he wasn't a hero. He was a victim of a violent cop and probably died because of the fentanyl in his system. And in this case, this guy maybe was wrongfully deported, maybe is an MS-13, maybe isn't an MS-13. I can't answer those things, but he's not a hero. And I don't know why we got to try and worship him or set him up in all of those things. All right, now, this is my ADD. I did make a joke on the last episode where I was giving style points to the leader of El Salvador, and then I was seeing pictures from the prison, and I kind of felt a little bit bad about that joke. And I mean, the pictures you see from that prison and the details that you hear from that prison make it sound like a pretty awful place. And, I guess we could skin people alive, and that might be a further deterrent from crime, but we choose not to do that because even for criminals, I guess, how horrible, how much horrific pain do you want to put on people? And so there's a part of me that goes, well, maybe they could be in nicer conditions. But then in terms of what El Salvador wants to do to the gang members that are accused in El Salvador, or whether or not they have due process, it's just kind of not my business. It's something you can't have the details on everything. You can't become an expert on everything. So I don't really have a firm position on anything El Salvador because I just don't know enough information about the country. I don't know enough about what was going on before they put these people in jail. I just don't know enough about it. But I just go back to the initial issue of people being taken from America by the American government and being deposited in there without due process with a life sentence and what by all details is a pretty horrible condition jail seems wrong. All right, but now back to the situation with the Maryland man and trying to sift through the bullshit. And I will be curious to see what you guys think, if this is a horrible person and will end up in the exact same place if we were to bring him back to the country, or if maybe the Donald Trump administration had this one wrong and they're doing everything to try and cover their ass because they look bad here. And I don't know. I don't trust the liberal media. I don't trust the way they hopped on this story. I think it's almost the dummy story because the better conversation to have is more just about due process and kind of the principles and rights that just human beings, specifically Americans in America should have. And once again, I understand that's the point. That's what makes this the dummy story, is that it's El Salvadorian guy being sent back to El Salvador. But the Uno cards of ascending bullshit that we're going to get into, of the back and forth between the media and the Donald Trump administration and trying to figure out whether or not this guy was deported. Well, technically, was he deported in error because of the prior judgment? But more the question is that did they have good evidence of the fact that this guy was an MS-13, that if he were to be brought back, we would end up in the exact same place? And I think the questions of the back and forth almost speak more to why you kind of need a little bit of due process, and why you might actually need to do a little bit more homework and actually, have some sort of checks and balances on the administration, because otherwise you get stuck in a tricky situation here, where on the one hand you have, do you want to always be placating left media that if they make some big stink over something, how much homework do you need to do to prove them wrong? And how much time needs to be wasted addressing their BS? And so in this case, they might actually have the story right. And I think it's almost the wrong story to focus on versus more of just the due process. But anyways, it's at what point can the current administration that was voted in by the general public be able to pursue its agenda without getting bogged down by lunacy from left media? And then, but on the same note, there seems something very authoritarian of, hey, just take our word for it. Hey, we're telling you that this guy was known MS-13, so that's the end of the story here. And I think even if you're a fan of the Republicans and you're a fan of Donald Trump, I don't think you want to be putting that much faith in anyone in government when they just say, hey, this is the way I say it is, so that's the way that it is. Now, one of the things that really annoys me about the media is that there's this weird game that is being played of almost just trying to win the news cycle for a single day without any single foresight that there might be new information tomorrow, or if you didn't do all your homework, new information is going to, like, if you're the media and you want to go, hey, the Donald Trump administration messed up and they sent an innocent Maryland man, father, steelworker down to El Salvador, you've got teams to do your homework on this. And wouldn't you have done a single criminal background check before you just ran the story, pretending hero, totally innocent citizen, to see? You could say person suspected or with entanglements with law enforcement that might lead to an assumption of MS-13. Once again, never actually convicted of committing a crime, and we'll look at the evidence that exists to say that he's MS-13. But it's interesting the way that they ran with this story right off the bat, where there's a lot of investigative journalism that the experts could be doing. I mean, the guy worked at a job. Have you talked to the people at the job? I mean, the guy got busted at a Home Depot. Have you gone to that Home Depot and seen how many people are actually trying to pick up work there? Did you try and pull the security footage? Do you talk to the manager? Have you done any reporting about how much level of MS-13 crime is in the area? Statistically, how much of the crime does it represent? How at risk are we? How at risk are the people of Maryland for El Salvador MS-13 members engaging in crime? How likely is it this person was involved with them? What are typically loose affiliations of MS-13? Do people in MS-13 typically work jobs? I just feel like there's a lot of actual investigative journalism that could have been done before the media just ran with the story. And that's kind of the bullshit on the media side, which is what I'm saying from both sides. We should be annoyed with the bullshit because then you got to untangle it. All right, so let's get into some of what's been going on over the last couple days. First, you've got Democrats land in El Salvador seeking release of Maryland resident, which is, you got all these bozos, they're looking for their photo opportunity. I might get to the point. It's just, this guy's not a hero. I understand. Let's talk about the administration and the way that they're pursuing their agenda of getting people out of the country. Maybe let's refocus them to a better immigration policy that allows for more needed workers, which I've been reading David Stockman talk about quite a bit. And, figuring out mass deportations. Let's actually get rid of criminals, but let's prove that they were involved in crimes. But this just feels like you know what's going to end up happening if the Democrats keep going down there is the El Salvadorians are going to end up having to call up Donald Trump and be like, we got to get rid of these criminals because your Democrats are a little bit too annoying. All right, and now let's get into some of the details that came out. So one of the details that came out about why the Maryland man was a reprehensible individual and absolutely needed to go was that there was a domestic violence. What do you call it when you gotta stick away from somebody? Restraining order. Yeah, I'm pretending that I don't know what that is because of all the ones that have been put on me. So I thought that it was a restraining order from the wife. And so people were looking at it and going, look, this guy is a domestic abuser. He's a bad guy. And so let's read this. After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, this is from the wife, I acted out of caution following a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated, she said. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. We're able to work through the situation privately as a family, including by going to counseling. Our marriage only grew stronger in the years that followed. No one is perfect and no marriage is perfect, but that is not a justification for ICE's action of abducting him and deporting him to a country where he's supposed to be protected from removal. Kilmore has always been a loving partner and father, and I will continue to stand by him, demand justice for him, the statement adds. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there when the cops took the report. I wasn't there when this lady made the report. Did this guy do something terrible to his wife? Did she then walk it back? Is she being threatened by other individuals? Is she being paid by other individuals to change her story? I don't know. But it's the ascending card of bullshit where you get the Republican administration going, we've got bombshell proof here that this guy is a bad person because, look, he's a domestic abuser and he beat his wife. Wouldn't you want to check and make sure, is his wife actively, did they live together over the last couple of years? Are they raising the kids together? It just, like, if that's the evidence that the guy's terrible, then you would think that you could get the lady on the news and she'd be going, oh yeah, my husband's terrible. That's a terrible guy. And so here she is being interviewed by none other than Michael Strahan. You know you're getting the good news. Oh, I haven't showed a single slide so far. Why don't you guys tell me when I'm doing that? I don't think there was anything. I didn't show all that much. All right, let's play this. This is Best in News. Michael Strahan giving an interview. Let's go. Oh, you guys are saying no sound? We can fix that. We can fix that. Hold on. We've gotten better at this. I know how to correct that. I think I know how to correct that. Let me know now if there's sound. There should be... Actually, you know what? Let me just try this real quick. In the meantime, I'll take a couple comments and we'll play it. I got Jamie Johnson saying she married him while he was in jail. I haven't seen that detail yet. Is that while he was in the El Salvadorian jail, like after he left the country? Or there was a different episode of him being in jail that I'm not aware of? Mike Tucker, in general, 100% for deportation, but concur that knowingly sending them to foreign prison should take due process. I'm hearing the Maryland did have due process to determine MS-13 affiliation. Send that my way because I will show you what I have on that, and I don't believe that that's an accurate representation of it. Moderately amused. Conservatives go too far. There needs to be due process to prove the detainees is not here American or here legally. All right, let's take one more, and then we'll play this. Mike Tucker, and these countries can trade away for all we care, not our problem, being the whole point. I don't understand. If there's a terrorist designation on these people, and the reason why they need to go to jail for life is because our country is saying that Venezuela is working with these individuals to undermine our country, isn't that our problem if they then end up back in Venezuela? If you actually believe that these people are terrorists, isn't that a problem for us? All right, let's take one more. Moderately amused. Robbie should start using closed caption by default. That's not bad. All right, let's give this a play.
Can you tell us what happened as you understand it, and how did you learn about his detainment?
Yes, it's been 37 days since March 12th, since my husband was abducted. It's been an emotional roller coaster, honestly. But just knowing right now that he's alive, you know, that day he was with our 5-year-old child, and we've continued, our faith has grown, and I keep him in my prayers to bring him back home.
And how did you learn?
All right. So once again, I don't know the details of the story. I don't know if the guy's a good or bad guy. I don't know if she's changed her attitude now for financial reasons, but you would think if you're making the claim, hey, this is a bad guy because he's a domestic abuser, and that's one of the pieces of evidence, it doesn't seem great when the victim of the domestic abuse is then on the news going, hey, can I have my husband back? All right, now here's the next one. This is obviously, it's coming from a random congressman, but this was one of the next pieces of information that they were putting forward to say that this guy is clearly a bad person and MS-13. Once again, I don't know, but like I'm trying to say, both sides are just bullshitting here, and that's what annoys me. Roll the tape.
That this man apparently was pulled over in Tennessee without a license and was arrested for human trafficking, and then when our Tennessee Highway Patrol, which do an excellent job, I'm a big fan of them, they did great work, they found out that this guy was apparently on the terrorist watch list. And during the Biden administration, the Biden...
All right, so he claims that this guy was arrested for human trafficking, and what would be more accurate, we can read it, the incident was filed... Here, according to the report, the trooper believed human trafficking was involved according to a DHS summary record on December. So actually, let's start this one from the top. I got to move over so I can see it. Subject was observed speeding and unable to maintain its lane and was subsequently pulled over, reads one entry. Encountering officer decided not to cite the subject for driving infractions, but gave him a warning citation for driving with an expired driving license. The memo continues. Of note, Maryland issues driver licenses to illegal aliens. According to the report, the trooper believed human trafficking was involved according to a DHS summary recorded on December 26, 2022. During the interview, subject pretended to speak less English than he was capable of and attempted to pull encountering officer off track by responding to questions with questions, reads the summary. When asked what relationship he had with the registered owners of the vehicle, subject replied the owner of the vehicle is his boss and that his work is in construction. There was no luggage in the vehicle, leading the encountering officer to suspect that this was a human trafficking incident, the report continues. The incident was filed in DHS system of human smuggling/trafficking, according to the memos. So, from what I understand, the guy was pulled over and let go, and then there was a report made about the fact that he was suspected of human trafficking. Now, as to why police officers are pulling people over that they suspect to be human traffickers and then just letting them go, I mean, that sounds like a scandal right there. And maybe that's a scandal on the Biden administration that they weren't supposed to be prosecuting these things. But it's inaccurate to say that he was arrested. He was pulled over for not for suspicion of human trafficking. He was pulled over for bad driving. For some reason, you know, you and we get in trouble for DUIs and whatnots, but if you're an illegal alien out in Maryland and they think that you're suspected of human trafficking, not driving in your car, and have, what was it, an expired license, they'll just let you keep on driving. So you got to take that up with the Maryland Police Department as to why our asses are always getting grilled and busted, and illegal aliens can have this much going on, and the cop will just be like, I don't want to deal with this, but I'll file a report about it. But it's inaccurate to say that the guy was arrested for human trafficking. He was pulled over, and a report was filed that he was a suspected human trafficker. And maybe that's the procedure, that you're not supposed to arrest these people. You're supposed to file a report with the Biden administration so they can throw it out. But like I said, it's just ascending bullshit here. You've got people on the right trying to say clearly an evil guy arrested for human trafficking. That is not accurate. All right. Then I was curious if he was ever arrested, and so he was arrested, and that was the incident outside of the Home Depot, which we'll read about in a minute. And then I was interested also to see if Oh, actually, you know what? We can read this first. So he was arrested. This is from Gronk. Was Kilmar Garcia ever arrested? Yes. Kilmar Brago Garcia was arrested in March 2019 in a Home Depot parking lot in Hyattsville, Maryland for loitering. According to a Prince George County Police Department gang field interview sheet, he was with 3 other men, one of whom was a known MS-13 gang member with an extensive criminal history. Now, once again, why police departments have people who are known MS-13 gang members with extensive criminal histories just being the fact that those people are just loitering outside and other people can loiter with them. I mean, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I'm not saying that that's not what happened, but if you want a scandal here, it's why police departments have known MS-13 gang members with extensive criminal histories just hanging outside of Home Depots. The police report alleged that Abrego Garcia was wearing clothing associated with MS-13 and that a confidential informant identified him as an active member of the gang's Western Clique. His attorney stated he was soliciting day labor and denied any gang affiliation. He was detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's ICE following the arrest and placed into deportation proceedings, though he had no criminal record at the time. And then this was from David Stockman. I'm not going to show too much of this piece because you got to be a subscriber for it. But he was the first one that I saw to say this. To begin, the sole basis for the charge that Garcia is a hardened, dangerous MS-13 gang member is a double hearsay report filed by a Kirkland, Maryland cop 6 years ago. However, said peace officer was subsequently dismissed from Prince Edward County Force for attempting to procure his own piece of ass by trading police secrets for sex. That's right. It's low-life, flat-foot Detective Evan Mendez, who has provided the sum and substance of the case against Garcia. As it happened, Mendez detained Garcia and 3 others for loitering at a Home Depot parking lot in 2019, and then filed something the local sheriffs call a GFIS gang field interview sheet that incorporated hearsay from an unnamed CI confidential informant that later claimed Garcia was part of a clique operating in Brentwood with the rank of something. All right, and then this was also reported by USA Today, not a publication that I normally read nor stand by, but I was researching this one. Gay Venezuelan stylist, I don't know why they're still calling him a stylist, but everything I read says sheet worker. If he's got a wife and kid, I don't know why they're harping on the gay thing. Sent to Salvadorian prison after disgraced cops report. The imprisoned man sought shelter in the U.S. after he told authorities he was persecuted as a gay man, one of the particular social groups allowed to claim asylum. But the credibility of Charles Cross Jr., who signed the report, was so bad, prosecutors flagged him on a list of police who has been accused of lying, breaking the law, or acting in a way that erodes their credibility to testify in Milwaukee County. Cross was fired from his position as a Milwaukee police sergeant in 2012 after driving his car into a family's home while intoxicated. He appealed the decision and resigned in the process, according to the department. So once again, ascending Uno cards of bullshit. So you've got that he was seen with a known gang member of MS-13 and was arrested, but apparently it was done by a dirty cop. Now, the next piece of information that was put forward is evidence of the fact that he was an MS-13. This was from the police report. At approximately 14:27 hours, detective with Hyattsville City Police observed 4 individuals loitering in the parking lot of Home Depot located at 3301 East Highway Avenue in Hyattsville, Maryland. Approached the individuals. 2 of the individuals reached into their waistbands and discarded several unknown items under a parking vehicle. All 4 individuals were stopped. Immediately recognized Christian Hernandez Romero, a.k.a. Bimbo, as a member of the MS-13 Sailors Clique. 2 small plastic bottles containing marijuana was located on the scene. All 4 individuals were transported back to District 1 for interviews. Once again, it's odd to me that there's some character named Bimbo that they know is a part of MS-13 that was allowed to just legally walk the streets of Maryland. Members of Prince George County Gang Unit MS-13 Intelligence Squad have encountered Christopher Hernandez Romero on multiple occasions. He has extensive criminal history for multiple assaults, concealing dangerous weapons, burglary, and many other criminal offenses. He has also been found guilty of gang participation in the Circuit Court of Prince George County in December of 2018. I've thought that this was the article that referenced the fact that the evidence against the guy who was deported was that he was wearing a Bulls jersey, but that's not here. All right. So next question I asked was, where did Kilmar Garcia work? And apparently he was at the local union working as sheet metal. Then I asked about the area that he lived. This is all into Gronk. And then this I was curious about, is there documented crime activity from MS-13 gangs in the area, which came back with a yes. So I guess the area does have gang members. Now, the next thing that Donald Trump put out was the fact, and well, you got to actually read this tweet. This is the hand of the man that Democrats feel should be brought back to the United States because he is such a fine and innocent person. They said he's not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed onto his knuckles in 2 highly respected courts, found that he was a member of MS-13, beat up his wife, etc. I was elected to take bad people out of the United States, among other things. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. And so he put out this picture, and then the MS-13 that's on this picture is, this is not, it's, I don't know, it's not flagrant because that's what they're interpreting the tattoos to mean. It does not actually say on his hand MS-13. Is it possible or likely that those tattoos actually represent MS-13? Is there, are there gang experts in tattoos that said that these symbols mean MS-13? That's all possible. But when Donald Trump put out a picture holding it up saying his hand is MS-13, it is a doctored photo or one that was then interpreted and handed to him. All right. And now on the claim that 2 previous courts said that he's a member of MS-13, I went to Gronk, I asked him that. The claim that 2 federal judges determined Abrego Garcia as a member of MS-13 is misleading and requires context. An immigration judge in 2019 denied Abrego Garcia's bond request, citing evidence from a Prince George County Police Department gang field interview sheet and a DHS I-213 form, which alleged he was a verified member of MS-13 based on a confidential informant in his clothing, a Chicago Bulls hat, and hoodie. The finding was upheld by the Board of Immigration Appeals in a brief administration review. However, these rulings were not made by federal judges, but by an immigration judge and administration appeals board, and they specifically pertain to the bond denial, not a definitive adjunction of gang membership. Immigration bond hearing placed the burden on the detainee to prove that they are not a danger to the community, and the judge's decision relied on the government's evidence without deeply assessing its validity. Abrego Garcia's attorney has consistently argued that the informant's claim were uncorroborated and that the officer who authored the gang field interview sheet was later fired for misconduct unrelated to this case. Notably, the same immigration judge later granted Abrego Garcia withholding of removal in October 2019, determining he faced a clear probability of future prosecution. So it seems to me that the evidence thus far is the single instance where he was reported, the fact that he was wearing a Bulls jersey. And so I wouldn't say that it's rock solid that this guy's clearly MS-13. I mean, he might be. He might be. I'm not saying that he's not. I'm saying that both sides are kind of bullshitting us. All right. And now you've got Tom Horman. I thought overall Tom did a good job with this interview with Scarborough. But he does talk about that the mistake was not made when he was deported because the prior ruling of his deportation should not apply. To keeping him from being deported back to El Salvador shouldn't apply because the gang that he was afraid of no longer exists. And also now that he's determined to be a terrorist, it should no longer, the earlier decision shouldn't apply. Let's play that.
The administration has admitted it's a mistake. All parties have admitted it's a mistake. Do you admit that it's a mistake? And is this something that should not happen again?
Look, I don't agree with the term that was a mistake. I mean, I know that was put out in the beginning, but looking at this case, there's a couple of things in play here. First of all, it's a mistake because it said he had withholding or removal. Well, the facts surrounding that withholding have changed over the years. For instance, when that decision was made on withholding, he wasn't classified as a terrorist, which he is now. And plus, the conditions of the withholding was a danger of a specific gang in El Salvador. That gang don't exist anymore in El Salvador. Matter of fact, El Salvador is one of the safest nations in the region now because of the actions of President Bukele. So the facts surrounding that decision have changed, and we believe that the withholding order is set aside now that he's a terrorist because it doesn't.
So the thing I take issue with here, or what concerns me, is changing something to a terror designation. Then you don't have to actually have been convicted of a crime, but you now have a different status because you're considered to be a part of a group without being proven to be a part of the group. And so therefore now, since there's a terrorism title, the normal rules aren't applicable to you. And what concerns me about that is, and we played this on Part of the Problem years ago, but this was Frank Figluzzi, who worked at the FBI, had some strange title like a Dwight Schrute assistant to the assistant director. type title. But here he is after January 6th saying why we need a domestic terrorism title. And this is why it just concerns me. I understand in this case, they're using the terrorism title for MS-13, and MS-13 might be a horrible criminal organization. But the fact that you don't have to actually prove that people are in that group or that they've actually committed a crime, but now that there's a loose terrorist title, that just means that there are no rules anymore. Well, then who gets terrorism titles? Who gets to make those determinations? I mean, back during COVID times, you could have called me a bioweapons terrorist because I didn't think people needed to get a COVID vaccine. And so here, let's play this because I think it showcases that I'm not being a complete lunatic, because I think the elites, what they do, and it's what was happening when they had that information czar who was going to censor the information on the internet until we caught her singing Mary Poppins songs, is they will do what they can get away with. And they want as much power as they can possibly have. And believe me, if they could call you a terrorist for criticizing Israel, they would. They just can't get away with that right now. But they like to test the antennas. They like to test how much power do they have, and how much freedom are people willing to give up in the name of safety, and to what extent will they turn on their neighbors and tolerate this. And so with that introduction, let's give this a play.
But doesn't it have to be connected to something overseas?
It does. And
okay, but these people, the people who attacked the Capitol, they would not be in that category. These are just within the shores of America. It's a little bit different.
That's my point, is that it's time to read.
So you're saying we should be able to listen on them too?
I'm saying that the FBI is saying.
I'm not against that.
Let's talk it out. I'm saying when FBI agents rank and file write a letter to Congress, as they did last year, and said the domestic terrorism occurring under this administration is something we can't handle and don't have the investigative tools for, and we need a domestic terrorism law. When the folks who are charged with protecting us say they can't do it, we should listen to them. A domestic terrorism law has been proposed frequently in the House and even the Senate, and it keeps getting knocked down. It gets knocked down because of civil liberties concerns, but it's time now to call it what it is.
Okay, but you would also allow, would you not, that as bad as the Proud Boys and Boogaloo Boys and whoever these crazy people are, they're not trying to acquire nuclear weapons like the jihadis are, right? That is one big difference.
I hope you're right about that, but let's start.
Come on.
Let's start with.
They're going to.
Terrorism titles are a way to not have to actually prove that people committed crimes, or to take away their typical rights of due process, so that you can go, well, it's a terrorism title, and who gets to define that? Who gets to say that you're a part of that affiliation? That to me is the scariness of going, well, that earlier law doesn't apply because we've decided he's a terrorist now. All right, I think that's enough on this topic. Let's thank another one of our sponsors, and then I will take some comments. And once again, I'll go back to my initial statement. I don't like that both sides are just kind of bullshitting us, and that there isn't a clear storyline here, and that you got to do this much homework to try and figure out, wait, is this guy a good guy or a bad guy? Well, we've got evidence that he's a bad guy. All right, what's the evidence? He was wearing a Chicago Bulls jersey, and a dirty cop pulled him over with a known associate of MS-13 that's just allowed to wander the streets. All right, is that good evidence? He was arrested. Well, he wasn't arrested. Oh, he's got a hand tattoo. Well, it's a hand tattoo that you're determining. Oh, it wasn't a mistake because the earlier court injunction doesn't apply because he's a terrorist. Now, once again, this guy could be a real bad guy. But just, I'm saying the fact that the media just went all in on the George Floyd treatment of, hey, this is absolutely a mistake of the Donald Trump administration. That's not really an accurate claim. And then the administration's claim of, hey, we don't need due process for these individuals because we're perfect at this. That doesn't seem to be accurate either. All right, we can skip this next topic, which I'd already referenced at the top of the show, that the Supreme Court has ruled against the Donald Trump administration of doing quick deportations of Venezuelan citizens down to El Salvador. And now let's cover some quick topics, and then we will get into some tariff talk, which I think will be equally as divisive as this Maryland man talk, with a core contingency of the audience that takes the other side on some of these things. All right, let's do some quick ones. Donald Trump, Ukraine war peace deal, saying that he's going to walk away. Firstly, they have not told us if we're walking away from that. Does that mean that we're no longer supporting Ukraine in fighting Russia? Or at least I haven't seen anything people in the chat have seen otherwise. it seems to me that the threat of walking away might be a negotiating tactic to actually get these people to wrap things up, or for Zelensky to finally come back and take a minerals deal. I would like the clarification of Donald Trump's threat of we're walking away from this thing. Does that mean we're no longer sending weapons or support to Ukraine, and so they're on their own and they can work it out with Russia? And so maybe this gets them to call us up and go, all right, we'll take whatever you'll give us. Thus far, I haven't seen that clarified. And my guess is that this is a negotiating tactic by Donald Trump to try and get moving on a deal. That's also the same read I have on the Iran deal, of the way that this was leaked, that Israel is ready, about to make a strike. I can't prove it for fact, but I'm going to give Donald Trump credit on that one, that I think he does not want a war with Iran, and he's trying to let them know, hey, you better show up to the table and start making some concessions because we're ready to strike on you guys. Along the storyline of the Donald Trump administration having some, I don't really want, we're going to come back to this one. There's a storyline of basically legal services that had represented liberal agendas such as DEIs and other stuff that Donald Trump then won some court case against for hundreds of millions of dollars in legal services. Hasn't been widely covered. I think it's worth noting that it took place. We'll be back with more details on that one later. Douglas Murray, Ukraine war voices. All right. Listen, we've heard enough of the Douglas Murray stuff, and everyone's done a great job taking it on. There's just amongst all the stupidity that he said, I'd like to highlight this one real quickly. One of his complaints against Joe Rogan was that he didn't have on more voices advocating for the Ukraine war. And at this point, isn't that almost like complaining that during COVID, you didn't have more voices on advocating for the COVID shots? Why would we have more people that got the story wrong? That story, I mean, unless Putin ends up going on and taking over all of Russia, doesn't seem like we were going to win that war by sending more aid over to Ukraine. Seems like you would have just gotten more people killed, and if anything, potentially escalated us into a full confrontation with Russia. And so to look back on that one, which those voices got that story wrong when they told us Ukraine is winning the war. Ukraine is winning the war. And so to say, as a look back on something that you got wrong, why didn't you get more people on that were wrong about it? I don't even really understand the claim. All right, and then last is RFK Jr. and autism. I'm going to have Steven back on Wednesday to break down some of his theories on what made him so autistic. But here, I thought that this was funny, and that you've got clearly a problem in this country about autism. And then you got RFK Jr. saying, hey, let's take a look at this autism thing. And then for some reason, you got the Democrats going, you know what? I'll take the other side on this one. I'll just, you know what? That's what we do over here. You guys do something, we want to argue with you. So even if by all standards and metrics, it makes sense to take a little bit of a look into what's going on with the autism thing, we'll sit here and we'll holler at you that let's not take a look at it. Is it better that government, I mean, you guys are the big believers in government coming in, solving problems. You guys are the ones that seem to, that's the structure that you like. Do you guys think autism is not a problem in this country? It's not something that we should look into? All right, but before we play that, let's thank sheathunderwear.com. It's actually just sheath.com. Go load up, get yourself some underwears. It's summer porch store season. It's hot. It's going to be summer. You don't want all that sweaty nuts gathering up in your grundle, mixing up with your butt, making things all swampy, stinky, and sweaty. That's not what you want in your life. So instead, you know what you do? You go to sheath.com. You buy yourself some of the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. My personal favorite is the Donald Cerrone. I like the ones that go further down the leg. The other ones make you look a little sexier. If you got big muscular, what's the front muscle? The quads? I don't know. I think the quads are in the back. What's in the front? I'll make those look good. If you got big front leg muscles, like the things you get from squatting and stuff, and you want to show them off, you might want the higher lifting, more panty-like men's sheaths. I like the long-legged sheath that goes like all the way down just above the knee. Those are my personal favorites. And if you use promo code RYM, you get 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. Don't go another summer with sweaty, stinky nuts. All right, let's roll this clip.
So now he is of the belief that once you're born, that there are environmental toxins that are somehow affecting that, for which he has no evidence. He's just making it up. And I think that when he sort of over dramatizes this, that they'll never pay taxes, that they'll never love again. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw that 2-year series, Love on the Spectrum, that was on a reality show, but they can love again. So I'm not sure why he dramatizes it the way he does.
There you go. CNN going, hey, I watched a TV show of some autistic people on a TV show being able to fall in love. So without looking at any of the metrics of the range of autism, I'm just going to say that across the board, autistic people aren't doing that poorly, because I saw a couple of them in a TV show and they're doing okay. I mean, talk about a scientific analysis of the range of problems of autism. Is a guy on CNN arguing that autism's not that big of a deal because he watched a TV show where, it's a reality show. I've never watched it, of a bunch of autistic kids who are able to find love, probably because it's on the TV show and the producers helped facilitate it, and that they're on the upper range of autism that allows you to still be more functional. But, CNN, they saw a single TV show, and the fact that, RFK Jr. is saying that autism is something that will get in the way of people being able to live normal lives, work jobs, or find love. CNN wants to take the other side on that and say that that's not accurate, because I watched a TV show that's all about these people falling in love. And here we go. It's the bow tie vaccine man himself, Hotez. Let's play.
So now he is of the belief
it's the
that
exact
once you're
same
born,
clip with
that
the
there are
exact same person. Hold on. Let's see. Hopefully it's the next side. If not, I imported the same video twice, because you had that Peter Hotez guy essentially saying the same thing of you guys are being too dramatic looking into this whole autism thing. It's not as big of a deal as RFK Jr. is making it out to be. Do they want to take on the numbers? They want to take on any of the science? No, they just want to say, hey, no big deal. Don't look into that. I mean, they'll scare the bejesus out of you if you don't get a vaccine. They would, during COVID times, they'll scare the bejesus out of you. But they don't like to look at the numbers of how many younger kids were dying during COVID, and instead keeping them from going to school. And in this case, they don't want to look at the numbers. I don't even know the numbers, but I'm just saying, if someone's saying, hey, this is a problem, and these are the numbers, I'm not going to just hop on and go, hey, there's no problem with autism. And that seems to be the extent of the analysis by CNN and other leftists at the moment, where they just instantly, it's WWF, and they'll go, yeah, all right, I'll take the other side of this one. All right, let's get into some tariff talk. I'm going to take another stab at this one, because I saw some of the comments the last time. I saw what everyone was saying. Seems like a lot of you guys would prefer centralized government planning for more factory work. And I'd like to take on some of what I've read. So first is, I'd like to clarify on the issue of tariffs. I already said, if you're going to use tariffs in order to try and get concessions from other countries, it's not necessarily the gamble I would make. But if it works, you gambled and you won. And how can I criticize someone when they gamble and they win? I can criticize gambling. I might say gambling is not a good idea, but if you're on a winning streak and you're gambling and it's working, then all right, it's working. On the same note, you get claims that, and that's actually more my claim, but that essentially China's economy is on much weaker footing than ours. I've heard for years that, China, they've engaged in more centralized government planning than we have. They've built up all sorts of infrastructure of ghost cities. They've made all sorts of terrible calculations in their economic planning. And so they have a much bigger problem than we do in the United States of America with all the Fed pinning that we've done, because they have more centralized control over in China. And they've made bigger and worse investments and are closer to catastrophic failure than we are. And so perhaps if we're going to engage in a trade war with China, we've got the leverage and they're going to collapse quicker. And once again, maybe you're gambling, and you might win that gamble. And if you win that gamble, God bless. And then the last one is that we need tariffs because there are certain industries that are strategic assets. And so we need to be making those materials in the United States of America so that we're not dependent on foreign powers. So let's take all three of these all right, let's take the first two and say you're gambling, and if your gamble wins or works and you wins, all right, great. On the last one, strategic assets in the United States, I don't fully understand it. Mish Talk, I read that blog daily. He's been having some of the best coverage on everything that's going on with the tariffs. And he's also a free market economist. And when it comes to strategic assets, this is what he had to say. The best news from my end would be a pivot to building out industries critical to national security. Chips, energy, rare earths, and critical minerals, shipbuilding, pharmaceuticals are all things we need. I don't think we can partner with countries, though I'm not sure if that one's on the administration's agenda or not. Launching plans to get those things going would be great, and what I was hoping for from day one. All right, so on the topic of tariffs, the last one, I'm not sure I totally understand yet. I would love to, hopefully, maybe down the line, get Mish Talk on the show and he can explain this to us. But for those who like tariffs because they might get concessions and they like the gamble of it, I have no argument. And for those that think that there are critical industries in which tariffs are important, well, it's not really even a tariff issue at that point, because you cannot have tariffs and just say we need government to invest in these critical industries because we need to be able to source them. So I'll revisit that, and I want to shelve all those and go, okay, and take on just those of you who like tariffs because you think it's going to bring you better jobs or opportunities. So once again, I'm not addressing the gambling of that China might fold first. I'm not addressing critical industries. And I'm not addressing that tariffs might get other people to bring down their tariffs. I'm specifically taking on the idea that we need to raise the cost of items coming into this country because that will then be a boost to our economy and give you better job opportunities. And I think what people are more attracted to is the idea of job opportunities, specifically in factories and manufacturing. And according to my understanding, I don't think we'd be any better off, or that you would have a better job, or that our economy would be any better. And so we're getting into some of that. First, let's take a look at what actually happened that Donald Trump took a pause on the tariffs. And to give you guys the shorts, we owe a lot of money in this country, and we take on a lot of debt. We like having all the debt. And I think the Fed involves itself in manipulating the markets to try and pretend like there's more demand for our debt than there actually is. And they're always doing screwy things to keep the system cooking, trying to pretend like there's more liquidity than it is, propping up bubbles when they got to, bailing out their partners when they got to. And there's a lot of things that they got to do to keep the system afloat and make it seem like everything's healthy and that everything's working. And that 4% or 5%, 6%, 7%, whatever it is, that all these these lower interest rates make sense. And so I think what happened is it started pushing up the interest rates and they got spooked. So here, we can actually read this. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The bond route was scary, with the 10-year yield hitting 4.4% at one point Wednesday, capping the steepest three-day yield climb since 2001. This was accompanied by a decline in the dollar against a basket of currencies. The fire sale on the treasuries and the dollar sent a warning about a loss of confidence in Washington. Investors are demanding higher yields to hold even safe treasuries, which is the opposite of what usually happens in financial panics. And by the way, just because I'm such an expert and I get everything right, unlike Dave, who won't declare his expertise, I had said that I thought that it was a bad gamble because of all the screwiness that our Fed involves itself in trying to pretend like we have a healthier economy than we do. And seemingly, I was right on this one in that they got a little bit spooked by what was going on in the bond markets. And for those of you who think that Donald Trump is the brilliant expert with 4D planning at all the times, I'm going to skip this one. It's another article, Manufacturing the Dollar. It's just basically about why this isn't the best move for our economy. This was, we can skip this one as well. We could skip this one too. This is the one that I wanted to get to. I might go back. We might cover the 4 slides that I just decided to skip because there's good information in all of them. Trump advisors took advantage of Navarro's absence to push for tariff pause. Peter Navarro, an advisor to Trump in favor of wide-ranging tariffs, had been a fixture on the president's side after Liberation Day. And so for all of you guys that think that everything has been completely strategically thought out by Donald Trump, who has the centralized government policy that's going to get you your manufacturing job that's going to get you your factory job, and that having to spend more money on items that we could otherwise have for less is going to actually boost our economy, and it's going to create more wealth and prosperity, that you're going to have a job. Apparently, what got him to change course was that Peter Navarro got iced out of a meeting, and the other people got a hold of Donald Trump to say, hey, this is a terrible idea. They got him to tweet it out so that it was Twitter official. And so what they did to save face is they said, well, all these companies called us up to negotiate, and so we're going to put a pause on it because everyone's called us up to negotiate. And then they turned around and, of course, went, Donald Trump's a genius, and this was his plan the entire time, and we're in a better situation with China than we ever were. All right. I think that's all it is. It's what advisor has Donald Trump's ear and gets things to be Twitter official. If you can get him to, that's the stamp of approval. That's the signature pen, is if you can get Donald Trump to tweet it out, he can only walk back a policy so many times and reverse course so many times, especially if he can claim I was a genius for doing it the exact way that I just did it. It's not that easy to keep reversing course and going, no, this way's even more brilliant. No, this was more, I was only pretending to do that, and then I did this because that's really the brilliant way to do it. You only get to flip course so many times. And so for all you that thought he got into the tariff thing with some genius policy to get your factory job back, it appears that they were not prepared for the fact that perhaps people would demand higher interest rates because our economy wouldn't be doing as well. And that Peter Navarro being pushed out of a meeting, a secret meeting, so that the other people could go to him and go, hey, this isn't really working, we better take a 90-day pause, was all it took for him to walk back the policy. All right. And now let's actually get into the nitty-gritty of why I think tariffs are not helpful for the economy, and they will not help you get a better job. And it's going to be some of the things I said the last time. But I think for those of you who specifically want a factory job, you listen to the last episode, and you're like, wait a second, listen, I like working with my hands too. But I think what you want is you want a good job. And maybe you want a job that allows you to work with your hands, doesn't make you go to school, doesn't make you sit down and do a spreadsheet. I understand all those things. I hate all those. I hate spreadsheets. I hate every job I've ever had other than this current one, which is podcasting and stand-up, which I worked for 14 years in order to somewhat be able to do full-time. And I've worked all the jobs. And once again, for all the people, oh, you're just talking like a guy because you don't need to work these jobs. And all right, I guess now we're lived experience people. We're the woke left. You don't want to go see a doctor for cancer treatment unless the guy had cancer. If the most brilliant economist came on here and explained to you why tariffs weren't a good idea, but he was wealthy and he was a financial expert, you wouldn't want to listen to him because he doesn't understand what it is to want a factory job. He might have a better plan for you, but he doesn't have the lived experience of the factory job. All right. And then one other one that you guys were throwing at me as criticism of for other countries is if it's so bad, why do other countries have them? And what else would you like to copy from Europe? Do you want their socialized healthcare? Because other people are doing it, that makes it better policy? That's the way you look at the world? I mean, sure, I guess other countries have protected industries and harmed the consumers and the economy by driving up the prices of those. But you guys prefer it because, hey, that's what they're doing out in Europe. We should, if everyone else is, it can't be that bad if everyone else is doing it. Or maybe we could have the free economy and the great one, and then everyone else's can suck. All right. Anyways, first article I wanted to highlight, and I understand that you guys prefer centralized government planning for specific industry sector jobs when it's coming for Donald Trump, as opposed to industry sector jobs that might be coming from the liberals. But I do have a couple failed policies that I'd like to highlight from you that come from centralized government planning. And this was one article that came across my desk. Audit. Cuomo spent $453 million on 247,343 medical devices for COVID. State used only 3. And then they let the other ones just sit in warehouses until they rotted. Because Cuomo was basically just interested in selling everybody in the lockdown stuff and was looking for the photo opportunities as they wrongfully assumed that I don't even remember. That's how long it was from COVID. The ventilators were going to save lives. And so he got to spend a couple days on the news going, hey, isn't this wonderful? Isn't this wonderful? Look at how good I am at getting these ventilators. And they spent all the money stockpiling the ventilators and other medical equipment, and then they just let it go to rot. Because that's what happens when you have centralized government planning. All right. Now, I was curious. I went to Gronk and I asked them, between Obama and Joe Biden, how much money was spent on green energy initiatives that resulted in failed projects such as abandoned windmills or solar farms? Because, you know, the liberals, they had a favorite government centralized planning policy for let's have green energy. The free market doesn't prefer green energy, but government thought that global warming is so dangerous and that their friends needed profits and that they wanted to hamper the economy so that they could favor certain individuals and possibly create green carbon credit scams that you have to pay for things that would have otherwise been free. Sure, they had an agenda there. Donald Trump's got an agenda, wants to get you some factory job instead of the free market being able to run its course and seeing what kind of job that provides, which is probably could be more factory and manufacturing jobs if it wasn't for all the inflation and other policies from the Fed, if it wasn't for environmental regulations. I don't think our ability to be able to bring in goods for cheaper from other countries are what keep us from having jobs over here. But let's just explore what happens when government decides to have a centralized policy that goes against the free market. In Donald Trump's case, it would be factory work for you, or in this case, it would be green energy. So let's take a look at what happened when the Obamas and the Bidens decided let's have a centralized government policy for more green energy. So first is you've got failed projects. Let's read what I highlighted over here. Adding Crescent Dunes and Caliasser, which were not fully accounted for in the JO report, the total losses from high-profile failed projects likely range from 2.5 to 3 billion. Other sources, such as the Heritage Foundation, claim up to $15 billion in losses when including smaller failed grants, weatherization program inefficiencies, and green job training programs that underperformed, e.g. a $500 million program trained only 8,035 workers instead of 124,000. And then I think I had more of the totals from both. Let's look at the totals. Total green energy spending from the Obama administration is 900 to 100 billion. Estimated losses from failed projects, 2.5 to $3 billion, potentially up to 15 billion if including broader inefficiencies. Biden administration total green energy spending is 400 to 600 billion. Estimated losses from failed projects are 200 to 400 million, which at the moment I would assume that that's a low number because the projects haven't all failed. Just last year, there was a story of the Obama the Obama solar farms in California, which was a massive project failing. All right, now I was curious. This is what's fun about Gronk is he can get some specifics on things. What percentage of U.S. factory jobs work with raw materials imported from another country? And basically, when it comes to there's earth minerals that we import from other countries like gallium, 94% comes in, cobalt, 81%. But over half of U.S. imports are intermediate components or raw materials with industrial supplies and materials, including raw materials like medicals, chemicals, and petroleum, accounting for a significant chunk, $675.4 billion in 2024. All right, and then I decided to take a look at below is the U.S. employment sector for 2023. And so current jobs, you've got non-farm by sector. So you got educational and health services, 36 million people work in that. Professional and business services, 22 million work in that. Leisure and hospitality, 16 million. Retail trade, 15 million. Transportation and warehousing, 6 million. And so this is what I was saying of the seen and unseen. If we drive up the costs of goods and services, how many jobs are we going to end up taking away from these fields where there's less wealth and prosperity to pay for all of these jobs? And then currently in manufacturing and construction, you've got 12 million jobs, construction, 8 million jobs. What happens when you drive up the cost of lumber? You drive up the cost of steel. You think there's going to be as many construction jobs available? All right. Does manufacturing rely on imported raw materials? I was curious about this because you don't like free trade. You'd like to have tariffs on all these goods and services. You think us paying more money for things that we could have for less money is somehow going to create wealth and prosperity. You're against the concept of automation across the board, technological development. Does manufacturing rely on imported raw materials? Yes, U.S. manufacturing relies significantly on imported raw materials. Though the extent varies by industry, many sectors depend on global supply chains for inputs due to cost, availability, or quality. Key points. Import dependency. Over half of the U.S. imports are intermediate goods or raw materials, including $675.4 billion in industrial supplies. Metals. The U.S. imports over 40% of commodities and rare earth minerals, with high reliance on gallium, cobalt, and titanium. Petroleum and chemicals. Refining and pharmaceutical industries rely on imported crude oil and chemical compounds. Electronics. Components like semiconductors often use imported raw earth minerals. And then I said, would banning all imported minerals lead to fewer manufacturing jobs? Cost increases. Domestic substitutes, if available, are often more expensive, raising production costs and reducing competitiveness. Job losses. The jobs that you guys want. So let's find out what happens if we increase the cost of the raw materials coming from other countries. You guys want manufacturing jobs, and you guys want factory jobs. So let's see what would happen to manufacturing and factoring jobs. Direct impact. Manufacturing employs 12.9 million people. Sectors with high import reliance, e.g. transportation equipment, electronics, could see job losses in the millions. For example, automotive employs 1 million workers. Significant reliance on imported metals and parts could cut jobs by 30 to 50% without alternatives. Electronics, reliant on imported chips and metals, could lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. Estimate, a rough estimate, suggests 20 to 40% of manufacturing jobs. Now, I went with a pure example of no goods coming in from other countries. But I'm just saying, the fact that we could get goods for less creates wealth that then allows you to have more money to pay on other things. And that's what creates all these jobs, including jobs in sectors like factories and warehouses, and the factories of people and your manual labor jobs are going to build homes, construction jobs, welding jobs. And I think what you're going to find is, because already Donald Trump was walking back his tariffs on electronics, is that you're going to end up in the same place where favored industries such as Apple or otherwise will be able to thwart this. And you're going to have centralized planning where a couple of winners might get a couple Trump jobs at some factory. But overall, I don't think it's actually good for the economy. All right, that is our episode. I think we went granular enough, a lot more granular than usual. Don't know that we'll do another episode getting this granular. Prefer to shoot from the hip, work off some of the headlines, but, you know, I tried to do a little more homework on this one. It was a good time. All right, here we go. We'll take a couple of comments, and then we will call it an episode. Kagan Sorrell, Robbie the Windmill Investigator Bernstein is on the case, folks. Lock in. There you go. Moderately amused. I've aged out of tech. I'd rather be working at a boring factory job than a Walmart greeter or any customer service of any retail company. I don't disagree with you. All right? I don't disagree. I like working with my hands. Jamie Johnson, wow, who knew Robbie was such an elitist judging factory jobs? I'm not judging factory jobs. I'm specifically not judging factory jobs. I'm saying you can still have factory jobs with raw goods and materials that other people can do for less. And the factory jobs, if we actually had a free market, probably don't pay enough money that you want them. And at the end of the day, I don't think you specifically want a factory job. You want a job that you can feel good at, clock in, make your money, and leave. I've worked with my hands. I like it. I prefer more than reading and thinking. There was enough money in it, believe me. I used to restock vending machines. That was not a fun job. I used to have the one job I actually liked was I used to build like office furniture. If I got in more hours, I would have liked that. I don't know that I would have ever really made any money with it, but it was kind of nice. I wish I did more stuff like when we have like production jobs, like, and things are immediate and I got to run wires. You guys have seen me on live podcasts run around, like running wires and whatnots. I enjoy it. You see it spin when you guys think I look down on manual labor. I don't. And but I think your opportunity for better manual labor jobs will be with the free market. Unless you want a job paying you $2-3 an hour so that it actually competes with China. If you want goods, you can have a factory job, you know, I guess creating the steel, or the factory job that works with the cheaper steel so that you can go work on skyscrapers. You can be in a factory making things with that raw material. And you're not trying to get rid of all raw materials from other countries. Now, if you tariff everything, you're just going to be driving up the cost because there's some rare earth materials we don't even have here. All right, I think it's enough for this topic. Slob City, but Rob, under the inflationary regime, people might have a harder time benefiting from the cheaper goods and services. I'm not sure I follow you on that one. Offer Nav, the left has an irrational hatred of profit and the right has an irrational hatred of division of labor involving businesses in other countries. All right, that's enough for now. We will be back next. We're going to be back on Wednesday. We're going to do an episode. We've got probably double guests coming on. I've got Stephen, the Wonder Boy non-scientist, who's going to break down how he became so autistic. And then I might have my friend Howie Dewey on telling us how he's trading all the left and rights and the back and forth of all this tariff action. I know he dug in on the Smoot-Hawley stuff. And he's got a very different approach to the markets and the financial solvency of our country. And I know that he was against them as well. In terms of the actual economic topic of proving to you guys that wealth and prosperity could be created through the voluntary exchange, and that, if you're pro-tariff, you should also be against the concept of automation, and you're too focused on job creation, you should go read the, we mentioned on Part of the Problem today, but Milton Friedman talking about the jobs creation program where they're using shovels instead of using the excavating equipment. And he's like, well, then why don't you guys use the spoons? But listen, I think we've had enough. I think it was granular enough, talked in enough circles, chaotic enough. Finicky episode from Run Your Mouth Enterprises. Back with more chaos later in the week, Wednesday. And then, guys, Porch Store. It is on Mobile, Alabama, this Friday. Starting Porch Store. Get your tickets, porchstore.com. It's always a pleasure. See you guys on